Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dark Pixel Podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Landon.
I'm Kason, and this is Sunny. This is my little girl. Now, quick thing, Mike's gonna, do more of the introductions on the topics, but I gotta freaking show you guys my daughter because she's adorable, first of all. Take a look at that face. But she's wearing just an adorable little shirt that says, "Whoever took my nose, please kindly give it back," right? And that shirt was given to us by Chocolate Rob. So freaking shout out to you, dude. You rock. Thanks so much. Thanks to everyone on the channel, by the way, for all the support. And here you go. This is for your baby. My spawn. This is my respawn. The
first.
Aren't there some games where you come back as like your son or something, like the permadeath games?
Oh, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if there's a
is.
game like that.
You start out Fallout 3 as like a baby.
Really?
Yeah. Liam Neeson's your dad.
Liam Neeson. Oh, I didn't even know that.
Totally.
I've not played that one. All right, we can continue, Mike.
Is this the inauguration first appearance on film?
That's right. This is her first appearance on
video
on YouTube film.
On YouTube video.
YouTube stock.
She made an appearance on Facebook a little while back, but
there you go.
Did you get her permission?
We did not. We'll have to get that from her when she's older. I'll teach her how to say yes, and then I'll ask her for permission, and she'll say yes. So, that's how that works.
Sounds good. That's how it works.
All right, I'm going to give it back to my wife now, so one sec. You can keep introducing the topic.
Sure. Okay, so a couple of really good news topics, I think, for this week. First of all, Shadows of War. It was recently revealed that the game will be including microtransactions.
More like
loot crates.
Transactions.
Loot crates with with equipment drops and items, as well as war crates that have ways to upgrade your army. These things can be purchased with real money, and people are very upset about it. So we're going to talk about what exactly it entails and how we think that might affect the game, whether or not it has ruined our excitement for the game the way it has ruined apparently many other people's excitement for the game. Topic number 2, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, a game from Ninja Theory, just released today actually. Very interesting game. I like calling it a AA game. The way that Ninja Theory has phrased it is that it's an indie AAA game, which is nonsense to me. Like those terms, anyways.
That's classic. Indie means nothing. I know it means nothing. Yeah. It's classic. Like have your cake and eat it too.
Yes.
So dumb.
It's a mid-tier game. It was in terms of budget size, right? So something in between a AAA game and an indie game has like the AAA look and feel production-wise, but maybe the scale, something more along the lines of what you'd expect from an indie game. I have played it for about 2 or 3 hours now, and so I want to give some impressions on that. But on top of that, there's been some controversy surrounding this with Jim Sterling's review of the game, which was initially a 1 out of 10 and has now been changed to a 7 out of 10.
Classic 7 out of 10.
Like to at least
but the Metacritic score only accounts his first review, right? When reviews get revised, they do not
only take the first one.
Factor into some of the aggregate websites. Anyways.
I believe he has actually spoken with Metacritic and is doing something to address that. So
that's weird because I believe IGN had that same issue a while back. I can't remember what game it was, and they wouldn't pick up.
They wouldn't.
Oh, it's for Prey. It was for Prey.
Right.
With that whole issue, they wouldn't pick up their revised review for the PC version.
See, Jim is so funny because this happens a lot with him, where he rashly gives things a terrible score and then has to come back later and never mind. It's so funny.
Anyways, a lot of interesting things to talk about concerning Hellblade. I think it's awesome, and I'll tell you guys why. Okay, then we're moving into the viewer-suggested topics for this week. First one comes from Daniel Imperial, and he asks, what are some game genres that you would like to see blended together that have not been done before? An example of this would be ActRaiser on this Super Nintendo, which was a blend of an action RPG platformer and a city simulation game, which is something that had not been done before and has not really been done since. Next topic comes from, and I hope I get at least close to pronouncing your name correctly. Monif Mujali asks, in the 90s era, Squaresoft RPGs, in 90s era Squaresoft RPGs, there wasn't an option in the beginning for easy, normal, or hard mode. Instead, your choice of characters in your party dictates the difficulty. For example, in Xenogears, you have Saitan, or Final Fantasy VII has Barret, or Zell in Final Fantasy VIII. All of these characters make the game a lot easier to play. Do you think that the choice of your team was the difficulty option? Okay. Okay, I forgot to write the name down. Oh, shoot, that's terrible, because, hold on, I have to look that up, because this guy has commented a lot in the past. He actually asked 4 different questions, so we're going to kind of do a rapid fire through them a little bit.
Yeah, we'll go through them quicker.
But I really liked the response he gave to last week's podcast. He's actually a singer in a band, and he always mentions that every time he comments. He's like, hey, and I'm going to forget the name. That's what I'm trying to remember right now. The lead singer, again, here to, tell you about.
It's like Lipstick or something like that?
Lipstick something, yeah. I'm going to look it up right now. I'm on the page, and I'm just going to make sure I get the name right.
Control F, lip. It'll take you right to it.
Actually, as long as
unless it's under read more.
Exactly.
Remember in the Rugrats, in the Rugrats TV show, the doctor who knew everything was lip shit. The more I think about that as an adult, I'm like, holy crap!
I can't believe it, man. I can't believe it. Is that a name? Is that like a German name?
I think it is.
His name is Lipstick Generation. So Lipstick Generation is asking. First question number 1: would a gambit system benefit?
Actually,
it does anything generation.
Yeah.
Would a gambit system benefit a more action-oriented game like Kingdom Hearts? If you were to pitch the next installment of the Chrono series, what would you suggest in terms of the main gameplay mechanic and world building? Other Chrono games like Chrono Trigger was obviously time travel. Chrono Cross was dimensional travel. Like, what would you pitch as this new Chrono games thing? And lastly, if you could replace Final Fantasy 11 and 14 with any 2 games from the series, like outside of the main line.
So you mean like Tactics, Big Story, right?
Yeah. If you were to replace those 2 with something else, what would it be?
Okay.
Lastly, William Diaz, what improvements would you make to your favorite Final Fantasy game? Okay. I did as much research as I had time for this morning, which was about an hour into this whole Shadows of War microtransactions debacle that people are freaking out about right now. Apparently there was a live stream that happened yesterday or maybe the day before. Can't remember exactly which day it was. But they got on and they were announcing this feature, this shop feature basically, where you could basically spend either in-game currency or a second in-game currency, which is gold. So they have Miriam, I think is what it's called, and then gold.
Yeah, like the previous game had.
Yeah, and so gold is the other currency you can use, but gold you get either in very small amounts by reaching certain milestones in the game, or you can purchase gold with real money, real world money. And then you can spend the gold on these, what are essentially like loot drops, like boxes that are sort of surprises that have loot and equipment and things in them. Or you can get war crates, which will give you like certain ways to benefit or upgrade your army. And then there was one other.
Yeah. Some stuff just gives you straight XP, right?
Yeah,
I think it was XP bonuses.
Straight XP to either your orc captains or straight to like what's his butt with the T? What's his name? Someone with a T, right? It's not Tyrion. What's his name?
I forget his name too, but anyways.
If they made a game with Turin, that would be freaking sweet.
Turin.
Oh,
yeah.
Anyways, so this has caused a great outcry, a great outburst of controversy online. And what I'm seeing is the common thread of concern is that this is the sort of thing you see in free-to-play games, mostly on phones, where that's their way. Yeah, it's their way of making revenue, right? So you play the game for free, and you spend the game is balanced in such a way to where it becomes tough on purpose, so that you are incentivized to spend money on something that will make it easier.
Yeah,
and people
the new Kingdom Hearts Unchained game has really been hard for people who want to keep playing it past a certain point, because you have to spend money. It's
Right.
ridiculous.
Right. And so, like, I guess for the free-to-play model, that makes sense to me to some degree. It's like, I mean, the game is free when you start playing it or whatever. But in a game that you pay $60 for, or in the case of people who buy, like, collector's editions, up to $100 for, people are concerned that the game will be balanced in such a way to where you will be incentivized largely. It'll become either a huge grind or really hard or something, and that people will be pushed, or at least sort of just nudged towards, like, spend more money so that you can get a better sword or better equipment to make this part easier, or a better ability for your armies or something like that. I think that is a genuine concern for sure. I think that it's too early to freak out quite this much about it, because at least to what the devs are saying is that that won't be the case. Like, you will be able to play the game. You will have, by playing the game, you will be able to generate the in-game currency to a degree that you'll be able to get these, and you'll be able to progress fairly without having to do this. Now, don't take a dev's word for it until the game's out, for sure. And what this means to me is that it's not a day one purchase. Like, that, this automatically for me makes it not a day one purchase, where it would have been before, because I was such a big fan of the first one. So this is something where I say, watch and see what reviewers that you trust say about this issue before buying. I would definitely say don't pre-order. Until if this is something that concerns you, that is. Don't pre-order if this concerns you. Don't buy it day one if this concerns you. Just wait and see what that balance really actually is. And if it is balanced in that way, yeah, that's a pretty despicable business practice, and it's not something that I think we should be supporting, as many other people are saying.
Yeah,
trying to think of like where to go with this, but
I got you.
What I was thinking about when I first heard this news, because people have been upset about this, like you're saying, for a couple of days now, is that, well, the incentive is supposed to be, hey, buy this currency because it's going to give you XP, and what the devs literally say is like, hey, then you won't have to play as many of these battles.
Yeah, you won't have to raid
as much time in the game to earn these things. Where like otherwise you're going to spend time doing community challenges theoretically,
fighting your nemesis, and
and so that just cracks me up, because it's like the incentive is like, hey, we made this game, you really don't want to play it too much. So, like, we made this way you could pay us. I'm thinking I want to make a game where it's like $100 base price, $100. I will just show you the freaking credits. You beat the game. Just pay me $100. You beat the whole game. If you want to pay me $10, you can.
Dude, speedrunners, like how fast you can load the game,
how fast you punch in your pin for your card.
Yeah, there you go, and then play it, and then by the credits. Yeah, I don't know, man. That'd be a cult classic.
It just sounds so backwards to me. It sounds like
you get less content the more money you pay.
There's this weird.
You have to do less, and
like there's a balance to, like, obviously you want to have a little bit of like there's that bell curve distribution of, like, some people just don't want to spend much time at all in a game. Like, there are people that will go for this as an option, like, every time. They'll let Luigi beat the levels for them. Not that you had to pay for that, but you know what I mean.
Right.
They go for the stuff
They're
not like playing the game as much. It's just, I don't know what they're doing. I just don't relate to that. But and then there's people that would, like, never ever, like, I think I've mentioned this a few times before. I played Puzzle and Dragons on my phone for like 3 years. I never spent a single dollar on that game. You just have to know what you're doing.
Right.
And if you do, and also that's just a casual, like, I'm bored, I'll play for a little bit.
Right.
They got the premium currency.
Into.
Yeah, and the incentive there was, like, you could get more rolls to, like, get better characters to beat levels faster. But again, it's like to progress faster. But in an RPG where they should have set it up with an experience curve, right? Of, like, you have this challenge, and then that's followed by this challenge. You, like, wreck that when you just blow up. Like, all of a sudden I'm like, how do they do account for how powerful you should be? So
Right.
on one end, it's like, oh, maybe they just made it incredibly hard to encourage people. On the other end, maybe they didn't, and people are just going to make their own experience worse by doing this.
Right, right. And that's where, whenever I hear about things like this, I always look for, like, what is the optimal experience in this game? Like, how many nemesis being put in there, level design, how many raids you have to do, how, like, the way the fighting system goes, the pace of the game. What is the optimal set there? Is it with, and especially when it's microtransactions, it's not DLC, which is a set like $15, $5, $20, and you get so much, right? It's microtransaction. There's no ceiling on this. How many microtransactions do you have to purchase in order to get what the director, and this is what it all comes down to, what does the director feel the optimal, like, way to play this
Like
game?
spend $15 and
Exactly.
you're
15, get this item, or get these XP, skip these levels, and you will have an optimal experience for, and this is one of the things that I always try to, like, I'm just really big on the director, because video games are an art form, in my personal opinion, and the director has such an influence over that art. Just as with any other piece of, with like a movie or something. That's why I'm against things like, like spoilers, or because that way the director can't control the flow of information. You already know it. That one of the director's big jobs is to control the flow of information and the way the story progresses. And if that includes, certain, expecting the audience to not know certain things before they happen, that is the director's choice. That's the optimal way to play the game. When it comes to these microtransactions, it's like the producers or people above the director, I'm assuming, are saying, hey, let's sneak these things in here so we can make more money. But did they take out what the director had in mind, or did they add additional things and you're actually, like, making the experience worse? Right, by buying these microtransactions, or you're screwing up the pace of the game, or you're way over leveled and now you think the game's easy because you spent all this money and got all this XP, or, like, it just ruins the optimal flow of the game. But I'm curious, I really want to know if things were scaled back on the director's end, and that in order for that optimal experience, you do need to spend extra money, just a little bit more, and you can have that flow, you can have that pacing that the director set out to do from the beginning.
So they balanced it, assuming people would spend
a certain amount of money,
average amount.
But if that's not true, if the optimal pacing of the game is no microtransactions whatsoever, then that's a good thing. But there's no way you would know that until playing the game, because they're not going to tell you that. They want to the marketing team wants to pitch you on these microtransactions. You are the director is probably legally not allowed to say the best way to play this game is to not spend an extra cent on any of this side crap that my freaking, like, producer, CEO people decided to put in this game. He legally can't say that, right? Because that would hurt the sales of the game.
Right.
So anyways, I always get upset, not because they're microtransactions necessarily, because, like Mike mentioned, a lot of phone games operate this way. There's a lot of ways that microtransactions, like for cosmetic changes, there's ways they can be used more efficiently, more effectively, and that don't limit the director's creative abilities in this art form.
Well, cosmetic stuff makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
because
totally.
It's like, hey, do you care enough to give us extra money?
Some
okay.
people do. I know
We'll
people
make
who
your
spent
guy-
$20 on cosmetic stuff for their Xbox Live avatar.
Oh yeah, you can
And,
buy
like,
clothes for your
That
avatar.
does nothing, but people will still give you their money to do that.
That's right.
And so you don't need to, like, have these game-changing things in your microtransactions.
Or like buying themes on the 3DS. Like, you can buy a Splatoon 2 theme on your
Right.
3DS for a couple bucks. And, like,
Yeah.
that's not in the video game Splatoon 2, but they are
No.
monetizing Splatoon 2. In
It's-
other
yeah.
ways, but they're not taking away from the gameplay of it. The question is if this was planned for from the beginning,
Right.
and if they were able to create a good experience for the people that would opt out of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe there's probably a way to make 2 tracks where it's
Yeah.
like these people could both enjoy this.
Right.
But I think cosmetic things are the easiest way to maintain that.
Totally,
They're not
because that
getting
doesn't
paid.
affect the flow. That doesn't affect
Yeah.
any, unless the visual flow. Like, I remember, I've talked about this last podcast, but when I saw Noctis wearing his Chocobo hat,
Yeah.
like, sure, it doesn't affect the flow of the game pacing-wise, but it does affect the visual flow of the game as far as what the director, or Tetsuya Nomura being the character designer, as far as what they had intended for this character. and wearing a chocobo hat really does kind of mess with that vision a little bit. Right? But anyways, it at least doesn't affect the pacing of the game, right? It at least doesn't affect the director's, you know, artistic vision for the story. But the cosmetic stuff can just look a little funny. But you know, whatever you want to do, if you're going to give the company money, I guess I have no issue with that because I don't have to do it. But with these microtransactions, maybe for the optimal experience, maybe I do have to spend money. I resent that. I don't like it.
And then again, there's so many different kinds of people that play these games. There might be some people that are okay with taking their time and not spending that money.
We were talking about this right before the podcast, and you mentioned the stuff that you could pay to skip over per se is actually like fun. It's actually fun stuff in the game, right? Fun, right? And that's the funny thing about like Shadows of the first one, Shadows of Mordor. That like all these, you know, fighting your nemesis and tracking people down and like going like what's the word, raiding like the towns and stuff, or the orc little settlements and things, is like it's actually like really fun.
It's fun to do.
And so the fact that in the game they're like, oh, you don't have to do as much of this in order to beat the game, but it's like that was fun stuff to do. It's one thing to eliminate grinding, like in the case of Final Fantasy 12 Zodiac Age, or to speed things up a little bit. It's another thing to eliminate something that's actually a really fun process to go through,
like
in a
the
game.
Core gameplay loop of your game.
Right.
I mean, this game, it's like you run these big military campaigns, right? And it sounds like that's some stuff you'll be.
Yeah, this one's gonna be a little different.
I'm not really sure what aspects you're gonna be able to speed through more.
Yeah,
you'll just have to do less of those. But if that's fun, then why?
I don't know. Got to pay to skip the fun part of the game.
The strange thing about it, and I think the thing that, I mean, because you'll see this even in a lot of like multiplayer shooters and stuff. You know, like Overwatch, they have the loot drops.
Yeah, they do that in Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, the new Splinter Cell, or not Splinter Cell, Rainbow Six.
Rainbow Six, yeah.
That's the kind of thing with like online games where there's not as much like a pacing. You know, as to what I said about the director and him being the auteur more or less of the whole thing. When it comes to multiplayer, there's less of that. There's less of the artistic vision and more of just, you know, less pacing, more just however much time you have, that's how long you play over and over the same, you know, 4v4 matches or whatever. But
yeah, and you know,
it's more for the one player stuff I'm talking about.
I still think in a game that you've paid a lot of money for, that it's kind of dumb to have a way for other people to purchase or spend more money and get like advantages. Like if I don't have the extra money, let's say, you know, to purchase upgrades to my guns or whatever, and this guy has put an extra $500 into the game to get these drops, and his equipment is so much better, he's put in an advantage to me. You see this in a lot of free-to-play games, actually. Like the Final Fantasy 15 Empire is a great example of this, where people put lots of money into it, and they clearly have an advantage over players that are not. Now, in a free-to-play game, it's muddier. You know, it's like, yeah, the people who spend money and support the product, maybe they should, to some degree, have an advantage. But in a game that you pay $60 for, that should not exist, correct? But jumping away from that, this is a single-player game, right? So to me, it's like you guys are saying, you're only ruining your own experience.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. You're not hurting anyone else. And I can say, like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to buy all that stuff. I'm just going to play the game, you know, that I purchased.
Right.
And the way
as long as that lends to the optimal experience that the director intended. Right. And that is the assumption. We have to go on that because we have nothing else to do. And so
that's why I'm kind of in the place where I say, this would have been a day one purchase for me. I would have loved to buy it day one and play it, but I'm not going to now because that's what I'm concerned about. And I'm going to wait to see what, you know, reviewers I trust have to say on that issue before I decide to buy the game. Yeah, Jim
wait for Jim Sterling to give it a 2, and then it'll come back later and give it a 9, and then you missed it. You missed your chance to buy the game. It's sold out.
Anyways, let us know what you guys think of that. If there's some important piece of that conversation we're missing to give us a greater context about it, let us know. But I do think it's stupid. I don't think that sort of thing should be in single-player experiences. But again, because it is single-player, it's only your own experience you could be ruining by...
And to that end, yeah.
It's like a diminishing returns kind of idea that maybe somebody is like not getting as much out of playing the game anymore, and they're like, I just want to move ahead. And to me, kind of to play devil's advocate here, I don't see much harm in like allowing for other people to do that, as long as you are not making the gameplay for the people that do not choose to do that push them in that direction. So if you're making
and that is the question.
Levels very hard, and then they bring up the little thing in the corner. Hey, you want to put the thing? You loot box.
Wait, that reminds me. We made a video on our Dark Pixel main channel called Real Life DLC. Yeah. You guys should watch it, because that's what we're talking about when you talk about just a pop up. It's like, oh, you can't do that. You have to spend extra money. You're like, shoot, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Lena, because I actually agree with that, and I defend that for people. Like, people should have the experience they want to have. And I could say, you're ruining your own experience by buying this. But I can't say that, really, right? That person is the only one who knows what kind of experience they want from something. So if they don't want to do what the director's idea of the optimal amount of campaigns in order to earn the equipment is, if they don't want that experience and they'd rather, and they're willing to pay a little extra to skip some of that, then I defend their right to play the game the way they want to.
It's like fast forwarding through the montage scene in Rocky. Like the director wanted you to watch that, but if you go and fast forward through it and just skip until he's at the top of the stairs and pretend like you watched that whole movie, fine, do it, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. But as long as the base game without microtransactions is still acceptable, it doesn't turn into a grind. They didn't impede that experience in order to include these microtransactions and tempt you into buying them, then I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it as long as it doesn't go that far. So,
yeah, that's what it all comes back to, is the director. What and as far as whether other people should be allowed to do it or not, and maybe that's not for us to say what they should do, but I do believe that the director should have a say in whether or not people who play his game can do that.
This is almost like the new generation's version of buying a Game Genie.
You're right.
Like, hey, if you want to screw with this game, like, go pay extra money.
Yeah.
To do that.
And then they'll give you the magazine with all the codes that you can put in.
Oh man.
That's right. That is kind of funny, because I've been struggling to find an our generation equivalent to what's happening now with DLC and with this microtransactions, but that is a pretty decent one.
I remember how much
the Game Genie's not free,
because our parents bought ours.
Yeah, we also had that turbo thing. Remember?
You had
a turbo box
to plug your controllers in and hit A million times,
and then you click turbo, and then it would hit A 1,000 times per second.
I never found a game where that was useful.
I know. I don't know why we had it.
I think we put it in Mario, and it just
you would beast it in Mario Party mini games that require you to do.
Oh my gosh!
Yes, really fast A press.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
Totally beasted in that. Anyways, let's move on to the second topic here. The release of Hellblade.
Hellblade.
Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, just came out today. And I want to say, first of all, that I had a chance. I really wanted to make sure I had a chance to play it a bit before the podcast, because I wanted to have some personal context before I talked about the things that Jim Sterling said or that anyone else is saying about it.
Who's the other?
Total Biscuit.
Total Biscuit. I was going to say Cookie.
Total Biscuit.
Anyway.
Total Cookie.
Cookies are biscuits in England, right?
Yeah, it's true.
That's true. It's a very
localize that name, dude. That's bad localization.
It's terrible localization.
Terrible.
Nobody gets
it. It's a transliteration. Can't believe it.
So, I really like the game so far. I'll clarify, I've played about 2 hours. 2.5 hours maybe. So the game is roughly 10 hours from what I'm hearing total. So it's a shorter game. It is a game based in some really cool, rich Norse mythology. And the whole idea of it is that this character is descending into that mythology's version of hell to try and rescue her beloved and bring him back into the real world or whatever. This character is plagued with mental illness, psychosis. She suffers with psychosis. So they actually, when you start the game up, it says for the optimal experience, use headphones because of the way it uses all the voices and the whispers all around you that you're hearing all the time. And I have to say, I've played through, again, a short amount of the game, but enough, I think, to get the idea. It's really unsettling and quite effective at sort of establishing that paranoia that I think, I mean, I only experienced hearing voices constantly around me for 2 hours, and I was feeling really tense and like.
Oh, so they don't stop. They just keep going.
They talk to you all the time. I mean, you're constantly. They are constantly. There are short reprieves, which was something else I wanted to mention too, because it was like this gigantic relief almost when that would happen. Wow. But they're always constantly commenting on what you're doing, like either making fun of you or telling you don't do that, or yes, hurry up. The conflicting voices. One of the first credits, when you're she's like rowing a boat in the beginning, you're seeing like the credits. They almost, I don't know if it's the very first one, but one of the first ones, they mentioned the consultant they had, the psychological consultant that they had, who was obviously giving them advice on how this works with people. They consulted with people who suffer with psychosis. And they also mentioned the historical consultant who was probably all giving them advice about Vikings and their mythology and the way they thought and things like that.
If they could be samurai, that's what he was telling me. Who is deadliest?
His deadliest. Anyways, I don't know how accurate any of that is, but it feels very believable. And I know just from the experience of a couple of hours of hearing voices that I found myself hearing somebody saying something to my left and looking over there, like with the camera, and like even though I know these voices are not, there's voices in her head, like it was still working on me somehow. So like I was looking like, what the freak?
A voice told Jim Sterling to give it a 1. That's the only logical conclusion here.
He was freaking out, man.
So it's
that's cool.
Like you can see the lack of scope by playing it. You can see that it is a smaller title. It's more confined in a lot of ways, but it's exploring very specific things that I've never seen done before. And that's kind of the appeal of indie games, right? Is that they try to go after things that are unique, that you have not seen before, that are not safe.
Yeah.
And so it has this production level, graphics-wise. Oh my goodness, the animation quality in her face is unbelievable. The best facial animation I've ever seen.
They were showing that stuff off like about
a couple of years ago.
A year or two ago. I remember watching a bunch of those breakdowns, and they were showing the model they had and like all their motion capture stuff. And
and they were doing it in real time, right? Because they had the actress on stage, and she would like pull these crazy faces, and they would like perfectly replicate that like immediately in the game engine.
At first, I thought it was going to be some tech demo or something. It's never going to be a game, but it's, all of a sudden I lost track of it, and then it shows up like, oh freak, it's Hellblade
out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I can't like. Obviously, I haven't played it enough to like give a recommendation. From what I've played so far, I think it's really great, and I think it explores ideas I've never seen before, and it was really working on me. What they were going for was working emotionally in me.
Nice.
But I think the really interesting thing to talk about here, and something we've talked about on previous podcasts, is the idea that the AAA industry is ballooning to a point where it is unsustainable for all except the biggest, wealthiest companies that there is. How do other studios compete with that? And this, I think, is such like a brilliant answer to that. Like, it is a mid-tier budget game. It doesn't try to do everything, every trendy feature that every game tries to have in it now. It doesn't have fishing, doesn't have parkour, doesn't have all of the freaking RPG elements. Like, it doesn't try to do everything. It's not open world. It doesn't try to do everything. It focuses on something specific, an idea that they had, and it tries to execute that brilliantly, and it does. It succeeds. And I want to see more of that. And what's so interesting about it is that they did that, and they can release the game digital only for half the price of a normal game. Now, there's also the added caveat that it's about 10-hour experience versus, most games try to be more in the 20 or up.
So you get $3 an hour. That's better than seeing a movie.
I know.
True.
It's and I think the fact that they don't, or that they chose not to print copies and ship them into stores and things like that, also we've talked about in the past, has allowed them to drive the cost down.
Yeah.
And the idea that we're moving into more of a digital only future for gaming signifies, at least to me, that is something that can be possible, that games can be cheaper if you're going to buy them digitally. Now, I understand all the arguments that people want physical media, and I concede that I understand, and you're right. Like, there are good reasons to keep physical media. But I just think that this was such a good example of how a digital-only future could be a good thing, if that is the direction it's going. And how mid-tier level developers can focus on something in particular that they want to explore in a game and execute that super well, and you don't have to have all this everything else in the game, and it can still be an awesome experience.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of it you guys have seen, or if you have any comments about what you know of it, but
just like the trailers and stuff. But I was following this morning.
Yeah,
I follow Mark Brown on Twitter, and he was really laying into Total Biscuit for Total Biscuit's opinion of this game, which disclaimer,
Total Biscuit did not like this game, and he didn't play it, but he had a very strong opinion for someone who had not played it.
Yeah. So really, all I know about it right now is kind of like what Mark Brown was railing on Total Biscuit over,
right?
Which was the battle of the Brits, I think you could call it. They're freaking being as sarcastic as they can with each other. But Total Biscuit felt like it was the permadeath in the game, where if you die a bunch of times, theoretically it'll delete your save, which some people are.
Some people have tested and it happens. Yeah. Other people have said, well, you have to die at different places in order for that to actually happen.
Yeah. Total Biscuit says it's anti-consumer, right? And Total Biscuit says he's a pro-consumer video game critic, and as a pro-consumer video game critic, he has to represent people. He says it's anti-consumer, and Mark Brown's like, this is a unique, interesting thing to do with a game.
Totally,
not every game is for everybody. Right?
Exactly, yeah. In fact, I think that was Mark Brown's point. It's like not every game is for everybody.
Yeah.
I was trying really hard to be open-minded too, but that's quite possibly the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, you should
it's
that whole thing.
Like,
one thing to your point though, when you're talking about picking one thing and just doing that was one of the things I really actually liked that other people didn't like, but that I liked about and I'm forgetting what it's called. What's the Tokyo RPG Factor? I Am Setsuna. One of the most common complaints about that game that I heard, and I know they're like half indie, half not. They're sponsored. They're like Square Enix, but they're not at the same time. But the most common complaint about it was that it was all snow, and visually it never changed. It was, and what we've come to expect through video games, through Zelda, through Mario, through I was bringing up Zelda and Mario because those are classic, but fine, Sonic and freaking what else?
You gotta have
every
your
game
GoPro trailer.
Right? Yeah. You've got to have the different palettes. Yeah. You've got to have your desert level. You have to have your water level. You have to have your jungle level. You have to have your snow level. But that's only one level, right? And then you have to have your different worlds, right? And they're all different. And you have to have your city world and it's really I don't know. World.
Coruscant, dude.
Funny City World, but. Wait, that'd be a sick movie.
City World.
Remember
there's a total
Water World. City World. Dude.
There's a freaking City World in the new Mario game.
Is that like a company can just pick? Hey, this game does not have to take place at all the four corners of the earth. It can maybe just have happened in this one spot, and that's okay. And it's a snowy place, and you're not going to see all your different scenery. Like the GoPro videos, you're not going to have an orange color palette set against a green, set against a blue, set against a purple. You're just going to have white, and that lends itself to the melancholy atmosphere. I thought it worked very well, but a lot of people didn't like it, and that's fine. But what you're talking about here with Hellblade, where it's like focus on one thing and just do that. Don't try to do everything. Don't try to have your desert level in with your candy world level and your flying penguins or whatever. Just make just have it be about this thing, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to cram everything into your game. Yeah. I like that. I respect that.
Yeah, and actually, going on what you're saying, I actually think when every game tries to do everything and tries to make it bigger and more epic every time, that you actually start to lose that sense of grandeur and epicness. And I think that when you can reset in something that's on a smaller scale and you can still create a high amount of urgency and a high amount of drama within a smaller scope, a story that's, you know, much smaller in scope, that a lot of times that can be even more effective. And then when you jump back into something on the epic grand scale again, like, it feels big, you know. So I think you need a diversity there in games, especially because they always try to outdo themselves with the next installment. And sometimes
kind of like superhero movies,
fatiguing.
like, oh, what city do we destroy next? Right? How many times has New York been destroyed? Yeah, now they're destroying Hong Kong. Right now they're destroying. It's like, dudes, you can't. Every movie does not have to be this whole city is being destroyed. Like, maybe let's just have something happen somewhere else sometimes. And it's not,
I think that's what Thor
every
Ragnarok
freaking movie is that now, and it's just freaking ridiculous. You're right, Mike. It ends up becoming not as exciting the 100th time seeing New York City be destroyed. Like, okay, I'm done with this.
You know,
please move on.
What's weird on the point of like worlds and scope getting bigger, like in my memory, Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess are like the same size world. But when Breath of the Wild came out, people were overlaying all these maps.
It's all relative.
And I'm like, dang, Ocarina of Time's maps.
It's smaller than the Great Plateau.
Like, what the heck?
But
it doesn't feel like that.
No, it doesn't.
Especially going back and
it felt big.
Because zones, man. Because you go through a zone and it feels like you went somewhere really far. I like zone structure.
Twilight Princess does that too.
That's true.
And doesn't necessarily feel, in my memory, bigger than Ocarina of Time. But when you compare them, it's like way bigger. Like way. You know,
a lot of that might have to do with the fact, and we're getting a little bit off topic here, but I think it's interesting. That might have a little bit to do with the fact that you get Epona before you leave the first area of the game in Twilight Princess, you're riding a horse across Hyrule Field the first time you enter it. Whereas in Ocarina of Time, you're going back and forth across Hyrule Field.
Running slow.
Yeah, so it takes longer to traverse that smaller sized field. But it ends up feeling like it takes about the same amount of time. That's probably done on purpose.
I think so.
From a design standpoint. So,
yeah.
Very smart. It's funny, though, that, worlds can feel, even at certain, not the whole world, but at certain parts of Breath of the Wild, I'm like, are you for real? Like, we were just in this, like, icy terrain, and I'm already, like, flying into a jungle. I think in the bottom right, I feel that a little bit. In the jungle place. And then with like the red plateaus with the snow and stuff, and it's like that was a little too quick for me. That's a little too sudden. But the rest of it, they did a great job, I think. And it's impossible to avoid if you're going to try and have an open world seamless game without any transitions when you go to and fro. It's like the world is going to feel a little bit smaller, despite the fact that it's freaking massive. But that's an open world. Start to feel this isn't.
It's an open world game problem. It's like when you can literally go anywhere and you need seamless experiences between places, then how's that work? I mean, if you have a game that have it all linear path, like I don't know how Hellblade, but I imagine it's not open world at all.
Nope, it's
not. Definitely have a path that you're following.
But
those games can feel bigger in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The thing that's so great about it, and another criticism I've seen from people is saying like, oh, that camera angle is too close to the character. Like I want to be further out. But see, from my experience, all of these things we've just said, the closed nature of the world, the close nature of the camera, it all adds to this feeling of being trapped and being paranoid and being surrounded by things you can't escape from. Like all of it, I believe, is purposefully crafted to create that feeling in the player. And it works. And like that's why I would not want them to change any of that. There was one shot in particular where the camera just feels like it's so close to her as it's going around her head. And I felt this tingling in my own spine, in my own head, like as I was watching this and hearing, because the way they recorded the dialogue too, It's the same techniques they use for ASMR, where they get like they're eating the mic, right? They're right against it, and it's like right in your ear, like piercing directly into it.
One of those mannequin heads with the microphones in the
ears,
because a lot of times they'll do that, and you can sense the space that way.
That's right, especially if you wear headphones.
If they did that.
I'm not sure how they went about recording. I haven't seen anything on it, but I wouldn't be surprised. And it's just unbelievably effective how they are able to communicate that sense of just like there's no privacy, there's no escape. You are tense, you are trapped, and everything design-wise, from the world structure and like map layouts to the way that they use the camera to the combat itself and the weightiness of it, everything like basically adds to that sense of paranoia that a person with psychosis feels. And the fact that they were able to accomplish that, to me, means that they did what they set out to do and that the game is excellent for it. Despite the fact that it might not play the way you traditionally like third-person combat-focused games to play, and there are some criticisms I have of it, especially some of its puzzle solving. I don't think it's a perfect game by any means, but they did something that I have never experienced in a game before, which is to feel like I am suffering from psychosis, and that I think is amazing.
Better than Eternal Darkness.
I was gonna say everything you're saying is totally better than Eternal Darkness.
Eternal Darkness did it as well. That's true. That's a good point. Now, to speak quickly about Jim Sterling, just because this is a hot topic right now, I want to start out by saying I respect him a ton for how he has responded since he released the initial review. What happened to him is that he encountered a game-breaking bug where the game has a single save file autosave structure, and he went beyond a certain point, it autosaved, and he could not progress. So the game was broken because it saved, and he had not grabbed a torch that he needed to grab, and so he could not progress in the game. It was broken. He could not do anything about it. There are many people who are defending his initial review of that and saying, yes, this kind of game-breaking bug means the game is broken, and that justifies a score like a 1. He has recanted that, and I agree with his reasoning for it, because this is something that I personally, and I think that he has sort of come around on this too, would just want to let people know about, like let them know like, hey, this exists and watch out for this. Please let the developers know so they can fix this, because I enjoyed this game so much up to this point that I was going to give it an 8 or a 9. I loved it that much, but then this happened to me, and man, that really just was super disappointing.
The problem I have with that, and it's the same thing that happened with that guy who reviewed Prey, is that bug will be fixed. You know for a fact. You know for a fact it will be fixed.
Yes. Yes.
So what's the point of giving it a 1? You know what I mean? Like, what's the point of it? Like, it doesn't make any sense. If the developers come out and be like, "This is freaking it, you guys, just deal with it," I'd be like, "What? No crap.
Yeah, give it a 1."
I don't get that. I do not get that.
In the gaming landscape we are in today,
Dark Pixel podcast. That's why you give it a 1. Preemptively.
Yeah.
We are the #1 podcast in the world. And, you know, Jim Sterling wants a piece, and that's cool. I get it. He wants to be on the show. Jim, anytime you can come and be a guest on our show.
You don't have to give game ones, dude. We'll talk about it.
We'll talk.
This is also, I think, a product of the really hectic nature of game journalism, where you want to be the first person to get a review out. And as soon as that embargo goes away, you want to have something up. And people are finishing this game or getting close to finishing it like the day before that embargo. And so they have to put something up, and they're emotional right now. Oh, I'm so pissed off and frustrated. This game is broken. I was at the end. Now I have to start all over again. That kind of feeling is going to go into the video that's released a few hours after that. And that's
when you need an editor who can be like, dude,
or a producer,
take a deep breath,
somewhere. Yeah. That's funny. And I guess in Jim's defense, that's the world he's in. He's in the world of, if you're not first, you may as well not do it. Yeah. Right? And that's how journalism works now. It's stupid. But what's funny is with Breath of the Wild, he waited like 3 weeks before he reviewed that game, you know? And he soaked it all in and then put out what he, felt would kind of, that was his review of the game. Yeah. But for some reason, I guess this game he had to be out. I don't know. It's interesting, but he is in a world where, you know, if you're not first, you may as well not
this same thing. I don't know how much you guys read about what happened with Nick Robinson from Polygon this last week, but
I could not find like what exactly happened.
Women or something.
I understand what the allegations are, but
there's nothing out there that anyone can point to publicly at this point in time. But Polygon's investigating, but people that have known him for a long time, you know, I don't want to go all into that, but this kind of blew up because Nick Robinson or Nate Robinson, he
freaked out about a game.
He was playing Overcooked for Switch, which we were going to stream.
Oh
yeah, much fun. Yeah, so there's a lot of bugs in the game on Switch, and he encountered a bug, and he like contacted the devs and was like, I encountered this bug, and they're like, well, can you record the bug so we can reproduce it? And he ended up putting like the video on Twitter or something and made it kind of like a public thing, and he was like, I'm not gonna do you guys freaking QA for you. Like, you're asking me to do like your job, right? Like that should be my job. But they're a small developer. They're like, this is all we can go on. Is like,
they probably have like 5 people on their team.
And it's something the game reviewers haven't only started to run into this year. Let me tell you, especially with the freaking internet. You go back to PC games, if you were playing some copy of Doom, you know, on your PC, and there's a bug where you could not progress in the game, that's a bigger problem. If not everyone has the internet to get that patch.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that crap, you just didn't hear about that happening so much. And it could be either game devs are like, hey, we're going to wait for people to report bugs instead of putting much time and money into our own QA. Or that the game journalism is kind of hitting this low point, I would almost say, quality-wise, probably brought on by the urgency to get reviews out quick.
Yeah.
And what happens is like you can't do top quality work. Like it's like that triangle, right? Like quality, time, or price.
Price,
right?
Yeah.
And like you can have 2, but
2
not
to 3.
all 3.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that speed's making the quality go down. I totally serious that I believe the quality is going down. And I think one thing that helps with that is YouTube, because there's people who aren't reviewing every video game. Yeah. You know, they were able to take the time to review a specific game. I think that's why I would rather go with any YouTuber who specializes in something or only reviews 10 or a game a month or something. Yeah, which to my understanding, Total Biscuit tries to limit the number of games he reviews. So Total Biscuit, if you want to get on our podcast, you don't have to say ridiculous stuff.
He's on it right now.
Anyways, that's just my theory right now, is that the big outlets that are trying to review everything are driving a lot of the lower quality crap that we're seeing.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
and it's totally doable in the age of Twitter to have low quality journalism. That is, you almost can't have high quality journalism because, you know, like just with the way Twitter, and not that he's only on Twitter, he writes for Polygon, I think Vox or something like that.
Oh, Giant Bomb or something, I don't know.
And like that's cool, whatever. But he did videos. It's the really quick, right? You just don't need to write much. Just journalism has just kind of decayed a lot. It's unfortunate, but
because now the difference between like a journalist, game media or not really, it's just someone who has a blog with an audience. So it's like, I guess we're journalists now.
We are journalists, and we take our job very seriously.
We're game journalists.
Yeah, you better believe it. But yeah, getting back to Jim Sterling, I mean, he put that out. I mean, obviously people got pissed. But his response to that has, I think, been very admirable. He put out a video and said, like, you know, like, I've had good discussions with people, and you're right, this was an emotional thing. I've contacted Metacritic. I'm talking with them. And he turned out a second review that's already out that is a 7 out of 10, and has addressed the fact that his experience is not something that's likely to happen to most people, that this did happen to him, and that he has to take into account his personal experience with something, but that he can't equate this game to what he gave a 1 out of 10 to something, I can't remember what it's called, some piece of crap Steam early access. Like,
he's trying to pretend his scale means anything, though. His scale
it's arbitrary. It's arbitrary.
But, you know, to equate it to something like that is unfair when his experience was so good, aside from this one issue, that almost nobody else has experienced.
So I have a question. Sarah, this is, just the way marketing and journalism works. Had he given it a 7 out of 10 right out the gates, we wouldn't be talking about him right now, right? Right.
Probably.
Nobody would be talking about him.
7 out of 10s don't get talked about unless it's Breath of the Wild.
No one would talk about it at all.
And then
unless it's Breath of the Wild, then it's the lowest score. Anyways, just there's Jim Sterling.
There are a lot of people who...
He's a very smart guy. It's not just him. He knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for a very long time. And he knows how to get people's attention. Just put it that way.
There's definitely some truth to that. And I think that...
he knows
I
how
think
to get
in this case...
In
this case, giving something a 1 out of 10 that is clearly not a 1 out of 10 could have been that. I mean, it could have also been the fact that he wasn't legitimately that frustrated.
But yeah, I suppose.
And I can't really say for sure, but I do think that a lot of people hold that same opinion, that he does this to drive more attention to himself and to build his brand.
It's worked very well for me. Yeah.
And it has worked. And as much as I disagree with his approach to criticism sometimes, like, I really do like him as a personality. I think he's very funny, and I think he's very talented.
He is extremely funny.
And I find him entertaining, and I like watching his stuff, despite the fact that I do not agree with many things he says. So
right, me too. That's funny. There's no one else like him on the internet.
Oh, totally.
Like, people try to imitate him.
Thank God no one. Sterling, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No one does it quite like he does.
No.
And he freaking nails it. And it's a character. He's being a character. He's dressed up and he's putting on a show, and he's freaking nailed it. Like, he is so good at being the character that is Jim Sterling. It is freaking crazy.
What's weird is Jim Sterling, besides the Nintendo Power reviewers who we only knew by like their first names or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. No one knew their first name. Yeah.
The first reviewer that I actually became like aware of is a single specific person. Because before it was like, what did IGN give this?
Right, and you think, I need to. Like, it's the whole company.
It was Jim Sterling, because I would read, was it freaking Destructoid? And I would be interested in their review of a game, and it would come up like reviewer Jim Sterling. I'd be like, freak, no, now I'm not going to have any idea. Like, I remember thinking that, like, that was a long time ago. That was like 7 years ago or 8 years ago. I wasn't really into like who any of the specific people were. I was just more familiar with the outlets. He's the first person, and it's because of the way he reviews crap. It's because of that. I wouldn't have known his name.
It's pretty unique.
By now, I would have known his name because, again, like, reviewers these days it's like a cult of personality thing. It's like a, you build up a persona as like Total Biscuit.
Yeah, you create
Total
a character
Biscuit
and you
has his
brand, right?
domain and has his followers and has his brand. Like, critics having a brand, like, is freaking whack, because it's almost like they have a horse in the race on top of just like reviewing things. Like movie critics for the most part are like local newspaper columnists.
Yeah, they write for Chicago or for Miami.
Yeah, you have a regional interest, and there's a couple that have been able to rise above that. Fiscal Ebert.
Yeah, the ones who are
what's his face, Roper, who hated Fellowship of the Ring, and I'll never forgive him.
Oh my gosh, that's right. He gave a thumbs down.
He gave a thumbs down, dude.
Oh jeez.
So man. Anyways.
Yeah, it is. It's funny how that all works.
In any case,
gotta do it. So if you follow basketball, it's also what freaking Lonzo Ball's dad. What's his name?
Oh, LeVar Ball.
LeVar Ball.
That freaking guy.
Freaking Donald Trump, by the way, talking about like throwing outlandish things out there and then getting media attention and becoming the biggest thing.
It's a tactic.
I don't think
freaking works.
Anyone talks about LeVar Ball.
LeVar Ball. Holy crap. He's getting interviews. He's getting on ESPN every day. His kid, who wasn't even the #1 draft pick, is like freaking talked about. What shoes is he wearing?
He's like challenging Michael Jordan to like to a one-on-one and like sell it on pay-per-view. Like, anyone cares who LeVar Ball is?
But it worked. Is the point? It worked. No one really thinks he can beat Michael Jordan, but they will pay to watch that if it ever happens, because this guy is freaking crazy and he has done the Donald Trump thing. That's the world we live in today. That is how you get elected president. That is how you get to the top of YouTube. That is how you become a video game journalist. You have to freaking do these things, and it's stupid.
I think there's room at the top for like a few people to do that. I think if everyone was doing that, it would get lost in the noise. Like the signal to noise ratio of like wacky people to normal people.
Exactly.
It's like there's so few wacky people that you're paying more attention to them than like the noise of the normal people.
And I guess that is the idea. Like you know, Donald Trump or LeVar Ball, there's no one like them around them.
Yeah.
And so they rise up. But when everyone does it, it's true. Which on YouTube there is quite a bit of noise, like that, especially amongst video game journalists. They're all trying to make a name for themselves.
Anyways, guys, if you want to succeed in life, ask Dark Pixel Gaming to.
We'll tell you. We'll tell you what to do. We'll manage.
We'll tell you
life.
to do what we don't do.
Yeah, we don't do it on
lead to
purpose. We
success.
don't want to be known for that. You know, we don't. You know, we know how this works. We've been involved in the marketing field for a long time. But we don't want to portray ourselves the way that certain people do. We know that if we said certain things, we could get on the front page of Kotaku very quickly. I believe we can. It destroyed JonTron, to be honest. He hasn't uploaded anything in like 6 months. That's a good point. He lost a lot of money because of it. Generally speaking,
I don't want to equate what JonTron did, by the way, to what Jim Sterling did, because he's like that's a different kind of thing. But
it's
being
very
crazy,
different.
In general, just being crazy and like.
Right.
Yeah.
There is a point where it's like, okay, too much. But
I can hear you guys typing right now.
Like if he decided to just kind of own what he said and just keep going, he could have. He was getting so much media coverage.
Probably.
It was freaking insane.
His audience
at the same time, he's already I think twice had his website taken down by hackers and stuff. So to some extent, he could also hurt himself pretty badly in that way.
Oh, Jim Sterling got hacked though.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Breath of the Wild,
when
right?
you get hacked, then you tell everyone you got hacked, and then more publicity. Then you're getting to talk again, and now you're on the Daily Verge. Now you're on
that's true.
Now Huffington Post is going to talk about you.
HuffPo, dude.
HuffPo
Gaming. All the freaking YouTube channels that are like the drama channels they cover.
Oh my gosh, yes, and they'll talk about
that's
the injustice of.
That's big.
He spoke his mind, and he got taken down, and then boom, biggest thing on YouTube. That's how it works. We don't want to do that.
Nope, it sucks.
We don't love money that much, guys. We'd rather just play games and be cool.
How do you be cool?
How do you beat cool? All right, we're moving on to viewer-suggested topics now. Daniel Imperial asks, what are some game genres that you would like to see blended together that have not been done before? An example of this would be ActRaiser on the Super Nintendo, which was a blend of an action RPG platformer and a city simulation game, which is something that had not been done before that, and it's not really been done since. That's a very interesting question. I've never thought about that before.
It is a good
one. Well, I have thought about it before because of, what's that game? The Kairosoft game.
The Kairosoft. You got to mix your ninja genre game with your like dancing like love romance game, right?
Yeah.
Boom. I remember thinking about what those would be. I will say the most successful blend that I've seen in this, and we've talked about this several times, but it's sports games. Sports games with their RPG elements, where you have a character that essentially levels up as you play the single player campaign throughout seasons. And you get better and you improve your stats. And by the end of your rookie year, you're a 99 and everything. But it should be, by the end of maybe your fourth, fifth, sixth year, now you're broken in, as they say. But, sports games have done this genre mixing freaking masterfully, like almost perfectly. There's still issues with that, especially with physics in sports games. I don't know. There's problems. But the RPG elements are pretty seamlessly blended in, and they work. They make sense, right? Like, I shot a bunch of threes this game. It makes sense that I leveled up in three-pointers, right?
One of them was like, if you just attempted threes, you went up, and you didn't have to make them.
That was NBA Courtside 2.
You just blob
launch them. You get so much better.
Oh, and I remember in NBA Courtside 2, you could never level up in dunking. Because if you have you couldn't dunk. If you're 6'1", you can't dunk. But you could get alley-oops. Remember? If somebody lobs and you're running to the hoop, John Stockton would freaking throw it down, and you get a +1 in dunking. And if you could just time an alley-oop a couple times a game, you would eventually get your super low score. You could get it up. Anyways, there was a way to do it.
You're not Spreewell. It was
Brian Russell.
Oh, not
Latrell Sprewell.
No, I'm thinking of really Cash and Muggsy Bogues.
Oh, Muggsy. Yeah.
Muggsy Bogues.
5'3". But you could never level up your range. You couldn't get your range beyond 20 feet. 25 was the max, but when you did campaign, I don't know how you get it to 25.
I do remember that.
You've got to have a range of 20. But anyway, sports games, I would say, probably do the best job of this.
What about one that is this stuff that hasn't been done though?
Yeah, what would you like to see that has not been done?
So what, like in sports games, for example, like
Life Sim in sports games. We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
The Sims. You follow your basketball player all the way home. You go on dates with girls. You showboat. You decide, kind of like Persona 5. You decide, am I going to go practice basketball or am I going to go hang out with the girls for a little while? Right? And it depends. Do you want to become Michael Jordan or do you want to have a fun family life and just kind of be a bench player? You know, like, all right, well, practice or go date girls, and you can, or
Talk
go to
about
school.
practice.
Did you get drafted out of high school? You probably, Allen Iverson. You probably got to go to college first, right? And now you've got to balance school.
Now you have a bachelor's.
Got to get a scholarship, and then you go to the NBA, and then you've got to negotiate your salary and hire an agent. Like that would actually.
Oh, dude. I mean, there have been some of this implemented in some of like the college football games, but what if they had a game where you literally started out like YMCA Little League 5-year-old kid, and you go all the way up until being inducted in the Hall of Fame when you're 50 years old, dude. Now that
oh my! You start out, your kid can't even dribble. You're just holding it, running around.
Your dad's like trying to get you do drills. You're like,
no, Dad, I want to shoot threes.
You start hearing voices. You gotta like ignore the voices.
That's right.
That'd be a sweet game. I'd play that.
That would be fun. I've been talking about that for a long time. Since like, I don't know, for a long time. Me and Landon, I remember we would go on like vacations in the car and we just talk about our ideal basketball game where you can go home and be the dude after the game or before the game and just like total Sims, right? But that's just I don't know how fun that would actually be, but in my mind, it's awesome.
How far would they make that overlap? Do you have to manage how, like, your bladder, like how bad you have to pee in the middle of a game? Like, I gotta pee like, so bad. Like,
you gotta call time like 50 meters constantly, just like going up and down.
What's your Gatorade meter at? Although you wouldn't drink it, you would just put it in your mouth and spit it straight back out.
That's what they all do.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be fun.
Oh, that would be so fun, man. Awesome. Oof. And then your whole rookie season, you're just on the bench. You're just watching games the whole time because you're not good enough to play yet. But you have to actually do it. You have to go to the games and sit down. And maybe once every 5 or 6 games, if your team's up by 20 points, they'll put you in for trash time.
But you have to watch the whole game.
You got to watch the whole game. You got to be there, and you've got to be in the game because that's how you're looking at the plays, and maybe they can change perspective.
As long as you can
see what's happening.
You have a setting where you can be like, when there's a 3 or something.
That just reminded me of a kid's book I had, and what you do is you take a photo of yourself and you put it in the back of the book on the last page, but you put it right in the circle. There's a hole in like every page of the book.
Oh, and
so your face is on top of the player, and it's basically like a basketball game is the story, and you're on the bench, and then like a player goes down and gets hurt, and so coach puts you in, and then you like make the 3 to like win the game.
Nice.
I gotta find that book, dude. That book was sweet. That's my favorite.
Oh, that's cool. I gotta give my daughter that book. So outside of maybe sports, because I know that's not what most Dark Pixel podcast viewers / listeners are into. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Have either of you guys played ActRaiser? Because I'm like more interested in Act. I never knew there was like a city sim.
Yeah, I haven't played it, but H.C. Bailey has played it, and I watched his playthrough a little bit.
Because my favorite part of was it Breath of the Wild 2 or Breath of the Wild. Breath of Fire.
Breath of the Wild 2 is true.
It's already out, people.
Oh, dang. Breath of Fire 2. They were close. They could have had Breath of the Wild.
They could have had it. They blew it. Oops. I just hit my mic. Sorry about that.
My favorite part of that game was like the little town that you got up and running, and you'd like recruit people to go live in your town and like build the parts of it and stuff. I really liked that. I don't think that's anything close to what ActRaiser was doing because that's just a little town. Like, although maybe I don't know anything about ActRaiser really, but I liked that a a lot. I love simulation games just in general. So like any game that'll let me simulate something, I think is really fun. So it's like that's why I like the Civilization games so much. But it would be cool if there was a game like what that Final Fantasy 15 mobile game is not, where you actually in the setting of EOS you could create like a kingdom and have a whole history and guide its growth and interaction with other kingdoms.
SimCity Final Fantasy.
Yeah, there you go.
A lot of what we're talking about is combining sim something with
so.
and even with the what Daniel mentioned in the question here, he talks about a simulation game like a SimCity. And I think like
so no cowboy dating sims, none of those yet.
No, I don't think so. But the My Life is King, Crystal Chronicles, Final Fantasy, kind of brought that city sim aspect in a little bit, but kind of just left it at that. You didn't also get to tower defense or RPG or any of that.
That game was like half baked. Like I love the crap out of that game.
It was so cool.
They could have gone somewhere with it.
Yeah. Once you get to a certain point, it's pretty monotonous. It's like Harvest Moon, where it's like, hey, you've got 1 second error of like screwing up before the day's over because of all the stuff you have to do. And it's like if you accidentally go the wrong place, you're screwed. It's already nighttime.
Go right to the left.
And you didn't get the berries, you didn't go chop the wood, you didn't harvest, you didn't train your horse, you didn't train your dog to win the dog race, you didn't like harvest all your plants and water all your plants and give the girl you like a flower. You didn't get to do everything in a day, and that's what My Life is King became. So a lot of the city sim stuff, once you get a big city, it's really complicated to continue to manage it, and it kind of gets less fun. But I still like the sim element. I would much rather have it more like the Sims, like a life sim kind of thing, where it's not that big a deal if you let things go or not, or you're just kind of managing your own life.
Here you go. Epic fantasy medieval RPG flight simulator.
Flight simulator. Oh, there's a good idea right there.
You are a dragon pilot.
There you go, dude.
Maybe airship pilot. I don't know. Anyways, you just take people around, dude.
No, that's
just do your job every day.
Yeah, do your job. There's a game in Japan where you essentially run a train, right?
Yeah.
And they're very minimal.
In fact,
controls.
There was
speed.
There was one on the N64 even. It was like Densha de Go-Go or something.
Okay.
But I have one on 3DS. It's an actual train line, North Line in Kyoto.
Yeah, they actually like put a GoPro on the train, right?
Yeah.
And just like filmed it and then put that in the
try
game.
and stop in the exact right spot, and it's like really hard to do.
I'm sure. But it's crazy that they've done something like that. And then I kind of what you're talking about, Mike, just turn that into an airplane sim and then freaking. But what was that game that Microsoft Scalebound? Was it Scalebound? What was the Microsoft
the one that got
game?
canceled?
Yeah, where you're like this headphone dude with a dragon and you can like fly it around and also not if you don't want to. What you mentioned kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Oh, medieval flight simulator.
Yeah, well, sort of. I mean, I'm trying here.
Yeah, that's why they canceled it. Like this looks nothing like a medieval flight simulator anymore, guys.
I don't know. It's hard to give like a serious answer to that because I mean, what you're asking essentially is like come up with a novel idea, and it's hard to do that.
Exactly. I'd say like Splatoon. When I first saw Splatoon, I was like, okay, I've never seen a game like this before ever. Right? There's never been anything quite like this. And my initial reaction to it was, this is weird. Like, get it away from me. Yep. Please don't make me watch any more of this. I don't know about that game. And then you play it and it's fun, right? And so, like, you're right. A lot of the ideas that we can spit out at first thought is like, oh, that's a terrible idea. That is so stupid. But if it's done right, any idea can work. Like, anything can be made to work. Like, I just watched a few days ago, I watched the movie Hot Fuzz again.
Oh, yeah.
Explaining the premise for that movie, which I won't do, especially if no one's seen it, and because I don't know if I necessarily can do it justice, because it's weird. It's complex. There's a lot happening, but like it's a weird comedy mixed into an action film, mixed into like a horror slasher film, mixed into it's just the weirdest genre that you can think of, and that shouldn't work. It should not be that enjoyable a film, but it is. And because of the dark comedy aspect to it that the Coen brothers do so well with their own stuff. And so but explaining it, I don't know how he got funding for that film, because on paper that doesn't work.
They're their own genre now. Like
they are now.
Nick Frost, like yeah, I don't know. Was that the first one they did?
I think Shaun of the Dead was their first one, but it's just weird. Like Shaun of the Dead, zombie apocalypse, but the movie's not about a zombie apocalypse. It's about a guy trying to get a girl to sleep with him again, but they're in a zombie apocalypse and they're about and everyone's dying. And like, how does that work? But it works. That movie's freaking phenomenal. So,
Medieval Flight Simulator, dude.
Medieval Flight Sim, Mike. You could. That actually, I'm thinking about it.
I'm onto something.
That actually could, if it's done right, be a good game. Like I know I have some friends who played. They played a lot of. Oh, what was it called? It's not Call of Duty. What's the other Call of Duty? The
Battlefield.
Battlefield, right? So he played Battlefield. And he got really good at flying the helicopter. And this was back 15 years ago,
1942 or whatever.
Yeah, it wasn't 42. It was Battlefield 2, I think is what it was called. Battlefield 2. And that one came out like 2005, I guess. So it was around 2005. But he got really good at flying the helicopter. And that was hard to do. I don't know about Battlefield games today. I don't know if flying a helicopter is quite what it used to be. But it was not easy to do. And so if you can make a game where like you have to fly the dragons, but you have to learn how to fly a dragon, like really, and each dragon's different, you can do it. Or you can pull it off.
Dude,
Charizard won't obey you, dude.
Docking,
give it a berry.
Like the hardest thing in flight simulator games is just taking off and
landing
right?
and taking off.
So like, what if there's a game where it was like you're controlling an airship and you need to dock it in Lindblom? You know?
There you go.
You have to like you have to like pick the people up there.
Sweet,
that would be sick.
What if it was like what's that freaking game? The space simulator game that everyone likes.
Oh, Kerbal.
Oh, Kerbal.
No, not Kerbal.
Kerbal.
The one where you can like be anything. You could be like a freaking pirate, or you could be like a freaking trader, or you could be
Eve Online.
Oh, Eve.
No, cockpit, first person view.
Star.
No,
like Star Citizen, but not Star.
I know what you're talking about. Elite Dangerous.
Elite Dangerous. Elite Dangerous, but with like fetching dragons.
Seriously, that's not a bad idea. Sick. That would be really cool. I think it'd be sweet, and especially if there's like some weird aspect to it where you like can't touch the ground. For whatever the ground is lava.
The ground is lava.
Right? The whole Earth became lava, so you can't. It is.
Or you're on a gas
literally.
Planet. Like,
or you're on a gas planet. Like, sure, yeah. And it's just
you can't fall below a certain point in the atmosphere because you'll die. So you got to keep people up here, but you got to manage your dragons like stamina, and you got to go like long distance. But like if you're off by like a couple of degrees in your flight trajectory, like you won't make it.
You're screwed. and some dragons pull; they'll drag left or right.
Yep, they'll try to. They have mind of their own.
So you need to. Yeah, you need to like. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I thought that in Dinotopia, the dudes that could fly the pterodactyls. I can't remember what they were called. Were like the coolest people in all of Dinotopia because they had those special saddles they could get into.
Yeah, the saddle
dragons. That'd be even.
Dude, Dinotopia,
I don't know what's sicker, dinosaurs or dragons.
I don't know why Dinotopia is not a video game that I can play right now. We have good ideas, people. We just need to implement
Dude, dragons are sicker than dinosaurs because dragons are like the best of both worlds. They were real. But like in the universe as large as ours, there have to be dragons somewhere in the universe. There has to be. The probability of it means that they have to be real somewhere. Has to be.
Yeah, the probability
is that they did
that they did exist, not that they don't. With all of the infinite permutations of an infinitely expanding universe, like somewhere there are
dragons somewhere.
It's like the likelihood is that dragons exist and not that they do. Not that they don't.
Also, this game exists somewhere, so it's not my idea. So it's I didn't come up with it.
Shoot, you're pulling Steve Jobs here, dude.
Yep, I blew it.
There is no original ideas. Everything is
Daniel.
Everything's a ripoff.
All right, let's move on to the next question here. Monif Mojali, asks, in the 1990s era Squaresoft RPGs, there wasn't an option in the beginning for easy, normal, or hard mode. Instead, you chose your characters and your party, or the characters that you chose for your party dictated the difficulty. For example, in Xenogears, you had Saitan, or in Final Fantasy VII, Barret, and Zell and FF8 are all characters that make the game a lot easier to play. Do you think the choice of your team was the difficulty option? Depends on if what you mean by that is that was like an intended thing, right? A lot of times those things were just imbalanced on accident.
That was my exact thought. Like that was not done on purpose.
Right. So like to say it was the difficulty option and the developers did that on purpose is one thing. It's another thing to say like it could act as a difficulty option. And I think you certainly could say that, yeah, the game's a lot harder if you don't use this character. I think a really good example of that actually is the Thunder God Sid in Final Fantasy Tactics. The dude, as soon as he is in your party, it is like impossible to lose. Like he just wrecks everything in the game, especially if you upgrade his equipment like at all. Like he is just so powerful. And if you put him in your party, there are certain battles you can win in one turn. So it's definitely true that like the game can be made much easier or harder depending on who you put into your party or which characters you use or which abilities you use or whatever. And that could be considered some form of a difficulty slider. But whether or not that was done on purpose in the instances you're mentioning, I can't really say.
I would guess not, but
has anyone made a difficult, like a party tier list for Final Fantasy VII? Because I would have to imagine like the bottom would be like Kate Sith, freaking Vincent, and Yuffie, right?
Yeah. The thing about Final Fantasy VII though is while that probably is true, like stats do make this character more optimal. There are certain I know you can use Barrett to like basically just fire a billion freaking shots in one round and do like 1,000,000 damage or whatever. There are ways you can break the game in that way, but excluding those examples, like the materia really is what was more important than the characters. And it's like, yeah, if you use Eris to heal versus say Kate Sith, she'll do more, but it's like it's negligible. It doesn't matter that much.
Of the hardest way to beat Final Fantasy VII. Is that barring like literally not doing something like not using materia or something crazy,
right?
Would that be the hardest party to beat the game with?
Kate Sith, Vincent, I would say, because Vincent's power depends, especially on some of his later weapons, on how many enemies you've killed. He has killed himself, not like the party, but he himself has like finished. So if you don't use him a lot in the game, let's say, or at least don't kill with him a lot, he'd do low damage with certain weapons, and then
his limit Kate Sith is kind of
and his limit's not very good, in comparison to others for sure. And maybe as the third party, you have to have Cloud. You don't have choice, so there you go.
Yeah, you have to.
There you are.
So yeah, I mean,
that's hard mode for Final Fantasy VII.
It's hard mode. Vincent, Kate Sith, and Cloud. Or when Cloud is incapacitated, I think you have to have Sid in your party, I guess. So maybe at that period of the game. I do remember on my first playthrough of the game that I did struggle on that boss battle against Weapon, where when you don't have Cloud in the party and Sid's sort of like leading them for a while. That was one of the boss battles that I struggled with on my first playthrough. So that was a hard mode because Cloud's not in the party. Hard mode, no Cloud.
There you go. But that's
can't rely on those limit breaks.
Gonna have to do that. It is interesting to look at character lineups as being easy, medium, hard, easy, normal, hard mode. But like we mentioned, I don't think it was done on purpose. I don't think certain characters are stronger than others on purpose. I think the characters just weren't balanced perfectly, which is, it's not like it's their fault. Like it's really hard to balance. Like like Masahiro Sakurai, the guy who created Super Smash Brothers, he has talked a lot, even recently, even as early as I think this year, he talked about balancing in Super Smash Brothers and how difficult it is to get all the characters.
So many freaking
totally, and that's part of why in the Wii U Smash Brothers they did a lot of character clones, right? And in Melee and Brawl they did some, but in Smash Wii U, I don't know, they did a lot of character clones. Each character is like a sort of, either they're the same character, but one's stronger but slower, the other one's faster but weaker.
See, and I was already pissed about Captain Falcon and
Ganondorf. I know.
I was already pissed about that.
Yeah, like Mario and Luigi. Okay, fine. That's probably what gave them the idea, honestly, to clone was Mario and Luigi, whatever. But yeah, Ganondorf being basically the same character. And then I played recently as one of like the newer characters. I think I played as
Gotta be a Fire Emblem character.
There's so many of them. It's unbelievable. But I think I played as Cloud, actually. He had an interesting moveset, but it was very similar, I guess, to some other characters. He wasn't as powerful as I thought he'd be. A lot of people still like to use him, I think just because he looks cool. But
he's actually a high-tier character, I think.
I've seen him used a lot. I've noticed that a lot of characters that don't have a strong smash are actually high-tier characters because they can rack up damage in other ways. Like Marth, his smash is not as powerful as Ike's, but he's quicker, right? And anyway, so Cloud is quick, I guess, and but I've seen that a lot of professional Smash people will use
in Smash Brothers, it's almost actually more about the air game, like your back air, down air, up air, like those moves are often for edge guarding and stuff.
That's why
like
Hungrybox freaking plays as Jigglypuff and Kirby.
Yeah, just fly around.
Pisses people.
Just
and just do that for like
half
an hour, like straight.
Yeah, dude, until you grab the ledge and let go 150 times.
Yeah, and you hit their limit, and then you go one shy of the limit for the tournament,
and then you finally, because no one knows, but you secretly do.
You're counting.
Yeah, that's crazy. Anyways, that's a balancing problem. I know when I first played the Super NES Star Fox, there was 3 paths you could take, A, B, and C. It didn't say easy, normal, hard.
Right.
But it was easy, normal, hard. But we had no way of knowing that. And so I guess my point being for Final Fantasy, for the 90s Final Fantasy games, you have, especially when you first play the game, you have no way of knowing whether you're playing it on hard mode or not. You're just picking the character you like.
Yeah.
And so if that was what they were doing, bad on them, because you should know if you're doing that or not. Because I would freaking play Star Fox for the SNES, and I wanted to go to a certain planet and just get jacked, and I didn't know that was the harder path, you know? Mm-hmm. But once you get a certain way into it, and you're screwed because you're only 6 and you can't beat that level, and you got to go all the way back and pick a different path.
Got to avoid
that's
the
kind of
belt, dude.
That's kind of
Yeah, interesting question. I guess I don't know really for sure. I would question whether or not those choices were made on purpose, but I guess in some instances, maybe not the ones mentioned here, it was done that way. Totally a possibility. So,
yeah.
All right. Lipstick generation. Rapid fire answers to your rapid fire questions. There was one question I didn't include. I'll save that one for another podcast, maybe.
Cool.
But first one is, would a gambit system benefit a more action-oriented game like Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy 15?
Yes.
Especially Kingdom Hearts.
Yes, especially Kingdom Hearts. Because you give Donald 4 high potions, and he's used all of them within the first 5 minutes. And you're like, Donald, stop it. And you have minimal customization. You can tell him, hey, heal less or heal more, but it's nothing like the Gambit system.
Yeah,
Kingdom Hearts would benefit so much from the Gambit system.
Yes. Kingdom Hearts needs a Gambit system for sure.
Yeah. It would make it less approachable to younger kids, I guess, because that is a little more complicated, but I would appreciate it way more.
So that, exactly like you're saying, so that you can tell the AI characters not to waste.
Yeah, wait till I'm below 20% before giving me a high potion.
Yeah.
Donald always has 0 magic for me. So either I tell him no magic or use magic sparingly, right? But when I say use magic sparingly, he still uses it all, right? So I don't even know what the highest option, use it all the time, be aggressive with your magic. I don't even know what that would do, because he's already out of magic all the time. Or you could just turn it off and then he never uses it. So there's got to be some in between there.
Yep. It'd be nice to have some level of control of that for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. If you were to pitch the next installment of the Chrono series, what would you suggest in terms of the main gameplay mechanic in world building? Chrono Trigger featured time travel. Chrono Cross featured travel across alternate timelines, or dimensional travel. What would be a fresh and new route to take the series in while still maintaining the spirit of the first 2 games? I thought about this, dealing with space and time and that sort of thing. Instead of it being a time travel manipulation or an alternate dimension manipulation or jumping between different timelines or whatever, maybe it could be about interstellar travel in some way, like using portals or whatever to go to different worlds and different planets, and jumping across great stretches of space. Being able to bend space itself could be an interesting way that they could go with that. Or
that would be, yeah.
Being able to move or in some way manipulate space so that you could warp or travel into different, to whatever degree that is, whether that's interstellar or even just within the planet you're on, just being able to manipulate, like be in many places at once, or I don't know, something to do with like bending space so you can move around in an interesting way would be a cool option, I think.
Light world, dark world. You look into a mirror, or anyways, go to those places. The word chrono does signify time. Yeah. Generally speaking, it's, that's where the root word comes from. And so time has to be a factor, but I do like the idea of, incorporating space travel, because time travel and space travel, as far as we know, with the theory of relativity, is that they're kind of connected, at least a little bit to some degree, with like gravity waves and all that. So, like that is a cool way to do it. That would kind of bring the Chrono series into
if it was all new place. If it was all based in gravity manipulation, then you could do both. Like you could control where you are relativity to other things, but also time itself as well. Like you could slow down time with gravity, you can speed it up, and you could move yourself around with gravity. So gravity manipulation might be an interesting like power to sort of like
that would lead to some sick weapons too. Yeah. Like some like gravity hammers and like gravity spells instead of like lightning and fire and water. You got gravity. That'd be sick.
Growing up, I always really liked the Philadelphia experiment. I read a bunch of books about it, where they supposedly teleported a battleship from,
and people were inside walls, and people
they came back and people were in the wrong spots, and then like people have supposedly been seen out of their time frame, right? Like
since
I think something like that could be really cool to mess with too, like intersecting people that are in the wrong time frame, intersecting with another time frame like that. I think could be pretty fun. But I haven't played Chrono Cross, so I don't know to what degree Chrono Cross like does that.
It's mostly just two alternate timelines you jump between, just two.
Okay, so it's not as
I've just seen the beginning of that game.
There's a Professor Layton game where you jump not way back. Well, you jump forward and back. It's like a time travel kind of thing. It's the one that I didn't quite finish. I think it was the third one that came out on the DS. But the way they dealt with it was pretty cool because you didn't know that you time traveled, at least not immediately. And you're going through and things are weird and different. You don't know why. And you eventually figure out, like, we've totally jumped through time here. And that's like, it's kind of like a weird reveal when that happens. But cool. I like the idea of traveling not on purpose, at least at first, and it being kind of a mystery as to what happened and how.
Like dropping the pendant and then getting sucked into the time machine at Millennial Fair on it.
Yeah, the warply thing.
Okay, and last question. If you could replace Final Fantasy 11 and 14 with two other games from this series, what games would you have take their place as numbered installments? Tactics, Type 0, Chrono Trigger come to mind. He puts in parentheses, Chrono Trigger was released in the Chronicles, the PlayStation 1 Chronicles that came with Final Fantasy 4. So it came bundled with Final Fantasy.
It is treated as a Final Fantasy game
in some ways,
Yeah, in many ways, yeah.
I would go outside the bounds of this question. I would replace Final Fantasy 8 with Final Fantasy Tactics. Come at me. Come at me.
I'm more drawn to Final Fantasy 14 than Final Fantasy 11.
Me too.
Like just because of the aesthetic of 14, because I liked 12 so much, and because 14 has like Ivalice incorporated in it now and like all that stuff. Leave 14, but 11, I would, and also because I love Final Fantasy 12 so much, I would throw Vagrant Story in there because. Now I have not beaten Vagrant Story. There's a disclaimer. I have played it. I have not beaten it.
So it's a 1 for you right now.
It's a 1. I don't know. I might encounter a glitch. I don't know that I won't encounter a glitch, but anyways, it's freaking sweet, and it I don't know. It's maybe not better than a lot of Final Fantasy games. It's better than a lot of them, but like, it's more or less like I feel really. I don't like the fact that it wasn't well received. Darn you people! Why did that happen? That game was so cool, and based on what happened in Vagrant Story, that shaped the direction Final Fantasy went like after in the next like 5 games after that. They're like, oh well, Vagrant's story didn't work, so let's freaking change all of this other stuff. And I just don't like the effect that it had. So even if it was a mainline Final Fantasy, it probably would make it worse, because now it probably still wouldn't have sold well, and that's stupid. But in my personal opinion, it's better than a lot of Final Fantasy games. Having not beaten it. But what I've played of it, it's freaking sweet.
It's a really hard question to answer for me, because a lot of the side projects are not in the same genre, right? And you could argue
it's pretty different.
You could argue that 11 and 14 aren't in the same genre as like the mainline games. I mean, they are more so, I would say, than Vagrant Story is. But I mean, if you're telling me you have to replace some other side project Final Fantasy game with 11 and 14, I would definitely choose Tactics, because I think it's that good. Like, I think the quality of Tactics is high enough to merit it being that, even though it is very different in style and tone and genre and everything like that. But I would pick it just because of its overall quality. I think it's high enough quality to be in that mainline series.
Now explain why you wouldn't pick Type 0.
Oh, God.
Just kidding. Mike has whole videos on that. You can watch. Go watch those.
Type 0, I'm not a fan of.
What about something like, because Final Fantasy 11 and 14 are so different, they're so not really Final Fantasy because of the nature of the online kind of stuff. It's just so different from all of the other Final Fantasy games. What about something like Dissidia becoming a mainline like Final Fantasy 14 is Final Fantasy Dissidia? How would that have gone over?
That's a very interesting question. I think the second Dissidia game, which actually incorporates like a world map you kind of run around on, you know, where you're like the big huge person running around on the world map.
Yeah.
There are some ways that if Dissidia were managed a little differently, like perhaps it could have been something that has potential to be a mainline game in that way. But I just think there's too much about it that's so different in the way that it's done. I'm not sure I would pick that one. But Mystic Quest, as much as people hate Mystic Quest, I think Mystic Quest has awesome music. That at least feels a little bit more in line with like what a Final Fantasy game is. It is obviously super casualized, and a lot of people love it and a lot of people hate it. But I don't think I'd pick Mystic Quest. But maybe Final Fantasy like Adventure, one of those Game Boy games that they eventually became. Was it Adventure that became Mana? The Mana series?
What did they call that? What did they call the first Seiken Densetsu?
Maybe it was because there's the Final Fantasy Adventure games, and then there's the Final Fantasy Legend or Final Fantasy something else series. I can't remember which one.
I used to know that because that's one of the projects that a lot of like Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana kind of like came from.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm just gonna pick Chrono Trigger. Final Fantasy Tactics and Chrono Trigger. That's what I would replace 11 and 14 with. Personally.
I got Vagrant Story and Chrono Trigger.
There you go.
And you can keep them. Just take out 8. Put in Tactics.
Take out 8, replace it with 11.
I'm thinking chronologically, like when the games actually came out. You know, like
Oh yeah. Right, because if Chrono Trigger came out,
after Final Fantasy 13, it would be like.
You know, Xenogears actually is a pretty good one to consider as well, because it was originally pitched to be Final Fantasy VII. They were looking for a Final Fantasy VII idea, and Takahashi brought Xenogears, the idea for Xenogears, the concept of Xenogears, to them, and they were like, no, it's too dark, it's not fantasy enough, it's too sci-fi. But they ended up keeping a lot of his ideas in the actual Final Fantasy VII later on. Like a lot of similar concepts exist between the two games. So Xenogears is not a bad consideration for that. I'd have to think about that. But that could have been a decent Final Fantasy game in its own way. I don't know. There you go. That's my answer to that.
Sick.
Chrono Trigger, I think, of all those games, is the most like a Final Fantasy game, though.
Yeah. What about Crystal Chronicles?
Crystal Chronicles.
All those games. Would that pass as
Crystal Chronicles?
Like Final Fantasy 11?
Yeah. Maybe. How about freaking.
I'm trying to think of what our options even are here.
What was the Sakaguchi game that he made with Microsoft? Not Blue
Last
Dragon.
Story?
Not Blue Dragon.
Oh yeah, that one
Lost
was
Odyssey.
sweet.
Lost Odyssey.
Lost Odyssey. That game was freaking cool. Yeah.
Lost Odyssey is like the real Final Fantasy 11 to me, or 12, or whatever it is.
You
real
know,
Final Fantasy. Not really. I like Final Fantasy 12 a lot. You know what I mean. Anyways,
a lot of Lost Odyssey. Lost Odyssey reminds me a lot of the I can't remember any of this stuff anymore. What was the Final Fantasy 15 movie that came out?
Kingsglaive.
Kingsglaive reminded me a lot of that, with the way the battles are taking place, with the massive enemies and the world there and the way it looks and everything, and the way the main character acts. It reminds me a lot of Kingsglaive. It totally could fit in like a Final Fantasy,
totally.
at least like a Final Fantasy 15 type of setting.
Lost Odyssey feels more like Final Fantasy than a lot of the more modern Final Fantasy games do. So,
yeah,
is what it
than
is.
13.
Way more.
Yep.
Okay, William Diaz, our final question. What improvements would you make to your favorite Final Fantasy game?
That's two things, because you got to figure out what your favorite is first, and that's
Ooh.
always hard for me.
My favorite is Final
Fantasy
Fantasy.
And redo it all with 3D graphics.
My
That's
favorite
nice,
Final
yeah.
Fantasy game is Final Fantasy VII.
Nice.
And I think what I would change in it would be...
Make it more like Final Fantasy 9.
Yeah, 4 party members.
It's like,
Fourth party member is a good one.
That actually would be better.
I actually
That
would tweak the way equipment works in that game, I think. Because, like, I understand that the customization of that game is really centered in materia, and that the weapons and the equipment and stuff, like, it's more about just choosing how many materia slots you're going to get, and then, like, what the rate of the materia growth on that weapon is, more than it is about, like, this weapon is good in this instance or that, or this equipment is good against this boss or that. I mean, there is some of it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all, but it's negligible. It doesn't matter almost at all, like, except that it boosts your attack power or your physical defense. Because I think magic defense in that game is completely bugged and doesn't work at all. So, like, you almost always just choose the next piece of armor you find and the next weapon you find in the next town, because it boosts your attack or your defense. Obviously, the accessories come in a little more handy if you want to prevent certain status effects or whatever. But I think putting a greater emphasis on equipment and having that matter in strategy in Final Fantasy VII would be something that I would like to see changed in that game. That's what I would pick.
I'm really think I guess my favorite Final Fantasy is 9, although I really, really like 6 and 7. But let's just say Final Fantasy 9, and what I would change is introduce more battle elements like Mario RPG or the Mario and Luigi games.
The timed
some timed interactive action type elements.
That would make
the
those
turn-based
games
system for some of the attacks. I think I've always enjoyed that. When I played Battle,
they had that in your least favorite Final Fantasy VIII with the breaks.
That's right. That
Maybe
time
you need
was
to
actually
reconsider.
way harder.
What are you talking about?
Eight
Final
than it
Fantasy
was in
Tactics? I don't remember that Final Fantasy Tactics.
Never heard of Final Fantasy VIII. He goes Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy Tactics, Final Fantasy IX.
That's how it went.
We're rewriting history here.
So
yeah, I think that's.
I would pick Final Fantasy VII, but make it totally CG. Use Advent Children Cloud, get the camera so they can go around and turn it into an action game. Make it so that Cloud's. Well, we don't really.
You're in luck.
Wait, they're
you
doing
are
that?
in luck.
Are you serious? Oh, and split it up over 3 different parts and force me to buy all 3 separate games, right? Because that's what I should do.
You're going to be so happy.
I know. That's my ideal. I can't believe they're doing that. That's incredible. Wow.
Such an
I
improvement.
was just throwing something out there.
So many improvements you just made right there.
Directed by Tetsuya Nomura this time, not the other guy.
The rightful director.
Exactly. The guy who should have directed all of the Final Fantasies since the first one. Anyways, he was like 18, but the kid was a prodigy, man. You're not giving him enough credit. Anyways, I'm being a little facetious here, but I really don't know because I love these games so much. I don't know exactly what would, like having 4 party members would be a pretty big deal. Just putting Vivi, just pick Vivi up and just put him in Final Fantasy VII. That would be sweet.
You'd still have a Black Mage's factory thing going on.
Yeah, get the whole factory going.
To be honest, though, that could work.
I think
Vivi's personality might not be exactly the same, but
No,
if you replaced Kate Sith with Vivi, there is a possibility that could
Shinra.
actually work, and that he's a doll being controlled or whatever. You know.
Yeah, but he becomes his own person and he breaks free, right? I mean, sort of.
Could
he's
work.
Supposed to. Anyways, so yeah, that's it. So
Vivi in Final Fantasy VII.
Or
That's what you change.
Or throw because throwing Cloud into Final Fantasy IX wouldn't have worked, but throwing Vivi into Final Fantasy VII would totally work.
Could, yeah, definitely work in that world for sure. Well, there you go, William Diaz. That's what we would do. Take it for what it's worth. Thanks, everybody, for watching our podcast, listening to our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd like to see more of our videos on YouTube, please look up Dark Pixel Gaming. We have an exciting announcement for an event coming up in August. We'll announce it, I think, next Monday. Be a trailer for it, so look forward to that. Aside from that, if you want to see our filmmaking and our visual effects, go to Dark Pixel. Check out those videos. And we'll see you guys again next week. Thank you for all your support. And have a great week. Peace out.